Welcome to Show Your Priors episode 6. We're your co-hosts, John Favreau and Jason Statham. Tonight on Show Your Priors, we're going to get into Claude Mythos. Will the internet ever be secure again? AI data centers are on the horizon. Can we actually power the things and keep our lights on? Will we even have a choice if China is way ahead of us on energy production? Vertical AI. Is it set to be gobbled up by hyper-powerful foundation models, or is there a niche yet to be had for them? But first, let's talk about some headlines. So Mike, let's get into the week's news. I want to start with Meta, who launched Muse Spark. Monetization remains unproven. Meta plans to pour between $115 billion and $135 billion this year into capital expenditures, and about 97% of its annual revenue comes from advertisements. If Muse Spark doesn't measurably improve ad targeting or unlock new revenue streams of some kind, this becomes the most expensive feature upgrade in history. What do you think about Meta and their new pay-for model?
I think it's interesting because in one of the previous episodes, we talked about Google doing the opposite, going from a proprietary model, but then opening up Gemma, making it open source. Meta's doing the opposite. Meta's typically been open source in the past with Llama, and the moment they felt the pressure of the other foundation models, probably Anthropic, OpenAI, you can go on and on, Gemini, they hire somebody, I think his name's Andrew Wong, and then they go proprietary as soon as they got it competitive. And I guess the question would be, what will they do with the Llama then? Will they keep the open source? And I know they hedged a little bit. They said, well, it's not clear that it'll be proprietary forever. But the interesting things is they already started to target a little bit. So where will they point this thing that they're developing? It's going to be multimodal. For those of you who are unaware what that means, it's going to be video, audio, etc. And that matches sort of the resources they've already got, right? You got WhatsApp, you got Facebook, you got Insta, right? They're focusing on the things that I think would accentuate the user experience in those apps. So will they generate revenue from it alone? I don't know, but oftentimes you may spend money doing this as a business just to accentuate the existing services that you're offering to your users to keep them locked in. I don't know if Facebook's shedding users. I haven't used it in forever, but that was just one of the things that came to my mind when I read the headline here. What are they doing with it strategically? And is this going to be a huge capital dump where it's just unclear where it goes? I think the difference between Meta, and I would put Google in the same box, and Anthropic and OpenAI in another box, is Meta and Google already have channels.
Yeah.
They already have distribution. So they have a huge advantage over Anthropic and OpenAI. You wonder what's going to happen in the long run. How will OpenAI and Anthropic build those channels? I know Anthropic's going deep into enterprise. Meta's probably not going to go there. Google's in enterprise, but it's more of a multimodal stack too, because they have different products under that. And OpenAI, well, they're sort of swirling in all directions right now.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they do make an enterprise play of some sort, just because that seems to be where the money is going to be coming from at first anyway. At least we're seeing that a lot with Anthropic, who we'll talk about in just a second. So I don't know. Maybe they will make an enterprise play, but there's one of two things happening here for me, and that is Meta is making a play to shareholders who want to see some sort of paid model because all the other companies are doing it. Where's ours? Or two,
that's right.
There are some numbers that they're finding that, some steps down the road that I don't know yet what they are, because these are smart people that know what they're doing, and there has to be some sort of money reason behind it. I just don't know what it is yet, but there might be.
You make a really good point. I think people underestimate how much shareholder and board pressure can force executives into spending capital on something they may never succeed with, but they don't have a choice because there's so much pressure on them to at least send a message to the market that they're also in AI, even if strategically it makes no sense. I think you could make a pretty good argument that Meta strategically, this could make sense to enhance the user experience of their current users. And the other thing I thought was really interesting about this one is it's more efficient, apparently. This is some little blurb that I saw, is like it uses less tokens than the other models. They use something called thought compression to do that. So they're already looking at the bottom line before they even scale this thing. And it's not clear that the other foundation models are doing that yet. They're just all
Yeah.
horsepower to the model. So that's interesting. They're taking that efficiency into account
Well,
already.
I did read something about, I don't know if it was hypertoken. It was something that made AI need 1/6 fewer tokens. I'll need to look into that. Maybe we can talk about that next week a little bit. But I kind of want to move to Google now, who on the opposite end of that, as we just mentioned, they launched Gemma last week. And now they're doing what I view as a demo product for Gemma. They've released on the iOS, they've released a free offline AI dictation app for iOS powered by Google's on-device Gemma models. It's not a transcription tool, but an editing layer that rewrites your speech into polished prose. So, right now it's on the iPhone, but imagine I could deploy this in a keyboard, for instance. I could hit a button on my keyboard and it begins dictating what I'm writing, but then it also takes out all the ums and rearranges it to make it more polished on the fly. Now, I don't think this will ever be in a doctor's office for this purpose. They need very specific dictation when you're giving medical notes. However, for me as a salesperson writing 100 emails a day, this is super valuable. I'm very excited to see this.
Yeah, one thing I found interesting, it looks like they launched it on Apple iOS first.
Yeah.
That's an interesting strategic move, why they would do that. But it turns out I think some of the famous dictation apps are located there. I think I'm just looking through them right now. Whisperflow, Super Whisper, Willow. Those are SaaS models that
Yep.
do one thing and do it really well. Key point here, Google released it, it's free. I think it's called Eloquent, right? Which makes sense.
Yeah,
You
you're right.
speak eloquently, right? So it helps you as a user speak more eloquently. So that's interesting. Why would they be doing that strategically? It may be what you said, to demo, to test, but it does call into question those types of models that do those one things really well. If Google can do that for free and destroy those other businesses, that's worth the demo maybe, right? They're just testing, can they actually do that? Huge brand name. An equivalent thing that came up recently, I don't know if you knew this. Do you know in Google in Gmail, you can set up your calendar and send a link out to people to schedule meetings?
Yeah.
So why on earth would you ever pay for Calendly or other applications like that anymore? And so Google's kind of it's not that they're announcing this to people, they're just kind of doing it under the radar
Yeah.
because they already own you as a user. You get locked into their search, into Gmail, and so forth, right? So I think it's a very interesting thing. And then I wonder, because I'm a language nerd. Could this native capability that they're releasing be used to create better language apps because it's already probably
Yeah.
has 100 and whatever languages supported in it already?
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went to, is a live translation device where you can be anywhere in the world because it doesn't need to be online.
And
Yeah.
Translate's already great, right? Another Google tool where I think most people are locked into Translate.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. All right, let's move on to Anthropic here. So Anthropic's annualized revenue surpassed OpenAI, at least with numbers that came out today. Anthropic said that they have a $30 billion run rate as of today. And last month, OpenAI said they have a $25 billion run rate. So Anthropic is now outpacing OpenAI. It suggests enterprise first may be structurally superior to consumer first, where inference costs make free users a liability. Anthropic now projects positive cash flow by 2028. OpenAI not cash flow positive until 2030 based on current projections.
No, I think you'd have to break that down, but it's a hell of an accomplishment to get to where they are right now. You want to break down where that cash is coming from. I think you hinted it's coming from enterprise. And I think a lot of people see enterprise as higher quality revenue because free users or just subscription-based users that you can turn off from month to month, they're going to churn. They just do, especially with so much competition coming out. We just talked about Meta releasing another one, right? And then you have the open source models. Why would enterprise be superior? On the one hand, it's very hard to penetrate enterprise. The lead times can be 6 to 12 months, right? Just to get a corporate service level agreement, get through all the layers of bureaucracy you got to get through to get there. But that ends up being a strength if you get through it. It becomes part of your defense. It's a barrier to entry for anyone else who wants to come in.
Yeah.
If you figured out how to sell into corporate, and then you're typically going to get multi-year contracts, 1 to 3 years. Anthropic may get even longer Now, if I were a corporate, I wouldn't do that right now because there's so much variability in the market around where these models are heading, and there's new capabilities every day from each different model. I don't know if I would lock myself in that long. I think you're right. You want to see if that revenue is really getting locked in for the long term. So you're getting this annual recurring revenue, which everybody wants to get. But I do also wonder about the cost because I just saw a couple articles this week talking about the capital cost for both of those, OpenAI and Anthropic. They're going to be posting like minus 85 billion loss. I think it's OpenAI. So that revenue is costing you a ton of capital.
Yeah, that's their training cost and also then inference costs. So the actual back and forth as users are talking to it, right? So that calculates both of those things, right?
Yeah, and the expansion, right? You're always trying to expand the model as far as possible, train on more and more data, and it just consumes more and more capital. And you wonder how sustainable that is.
Yeah.
I wonder, even if Anthropic, I think they have a 350 billion valuation. The IPO projection for OpenAI was closer to A52, closer to a trillion. How will you ever generate enough cash to justify those valuations when Meta announces theirs, Google's getting better, the open source models are getting better? I could be wrong, but I think the mental math that people are doing behind this is that they assume that AI is a winner take all market.
Yeah.
I don't think it is. I think it's obvious already. This is not winner take all. Is the pie just going to be so huge that they all produce enough cash for those valuations? I don't know. It reminds me of EV, electric vehicles. I once saw some stats. If you took all the investment in electric vehicles and the planned capacity and the predicted capacity, it went way past the car park, was what they call it, how many cars there are actually out there by far. What you know from that is that all of this investment, some of them are going to lose. There's just not enough cars to sell. But I don't know if that analogy holds for AI, because AI, maybe there's not a limited capacity out there. Maybe it's just expands forever. But I think that's a warning sign you want to look at when you have so much investment going into the same market, right? I know they're segmenting. Gemini is going in one direction, Anthropic another, OpenAI another, Meta in another. But you just wonder, is there really enough slack out there in the market?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll dig into that a lot more, I believe, in coming episodes. Real quick, I just wanted to mention that Intel joined Musk on his Terafab project. The move positions Intel at the center of Musk's latest attempt to redesign silicon fabrication technology. Terafab is envisioned as an end-to-end chip facility that combines design, testing, and packaging in one location, something Musk said doesn't exist anywhere in the world. A really quick take on this for me is TSMC, Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing is been doing this for decades, generations, and their ability to they can put 30% more semiconductors in the same area as Intel can. And they also have a much lower failure rate, which means that they get a lot more serviceable chips that aren't waste at the end of a production run than Intel does. So Intel is going to have they're going to have an uphill battle, one, but two, it is something that we need to diversify out of Taiwan completely next to China, because that is very, very dangerous, having all of our valuable semiconductors produced there. Anyways, my quick take. How about you?
Yeah, I think the quick take is, if you talked about the data centers in space and then XAI and Tesla and all the chips that you need just for Elon's companies, that's not even including everybody else's companies. I think I saw one estimation that you're going to need 5 trillion worth of development of chips.
Yeah.
And the budget for this is, what was it? 25 billion?
Yep.
Right, so is this just marketing, or are they going to really have the capital to actually produce the chips that you're going to need for all this?
Yeah.
Or are they going to have to dual source, triple source? And what that means is, can you really depend on the Taiwanese? Intel, maybe you're going to need a lot of hands on deck if you're ever going to reach that number of chips. So as you mentioned, Elon's really good at marketing, and you just wonder, what is the actual business model behind this? I don't know. But I think directionally he's correct that if you want to succeed at this, you do need to get your sourcing out of only Taiwan, have a 100%. More diverse supply base, and you're going to need a lot more than we currently have, even if this one succeeds.
Yeah. Well,
which it's not guaranteed. I don't even know if we have the engineers for this.
Speaking of grifters, Sam Altman has recently become the subject of intense public scrutiny following a sweeping investigative piece in The New Yorker that raises serious questions about his honesty and leadership. which arrived at the same moment as a Pentagon deal controversy, an Elon Musk lawsuit heading to trial, and a literal Molotov cocktail thrown at his home. I'll let you take the point on this one.
I think this one is a Molotov cocktail, right? So
Yeah.
it's just swirling with speculation about what's really going on. And to be fair, Ronan Farrow, right? He's writing for the New Yorker. He's going to find dirt, right? You're not going to get published if you don't find dirt. But some of the dirt, it does hint at some of the things Elon has been hinting at. One board member supposedly said Sam Altman is unconstrained by the truth. Now I make the joke, well, that sounds like just a typical corporate CEO. When were they not constrained by the truth? Maybe he's already ready for the IPO, right? The other was famous investor said that he's a straight up liar. Engineers are saying he doesn't even understand the technology. Again, ready for CEO. You don't even need to understand the technology. You don't need that. You just need
to navigate social media. You're good.
Exactly. Yeah. Vision and presence and be a tall person, right? And then you can be CEO.
I don't know about the tall person either. I was looking at some pictures. Anyways.
No, yeah, well, that's what they say, right? That CEOs should be tall.
Metaphorically tall. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, his ego's tall, apparently, right? So
yeah.
So there seems to be this onslaught of negative information, and Elon's been at it for a while. Anybody who's on X, you get his notifications. He's after Altman, and he's trying to get OpenAI to be pulled back into a non-private company, right? He wants it to be a non-profit company again, and for him not to be the CEO anymore. And that's just legit. So I don't know what's going on in the background there. You mentioned the Molotov cocktail, and then he went on a PR tour saying these types of stories, this type of negative publicity, of course, puts me in danger. So who knows what's going on? It sounds like corporate, just typical corporate, if you ask me.
Are you saying we've got a Juicy Smollier? Whoa. Is that what his name was?
Well, it's certainly juicy. Yeah.
Let's see. Anyways. Okay. Well, yeah, I agree. I've been looking at a lot of his spending habits lately. He's got a nice collection of Koenigsegg's lately. If you look into his real estate deals in his San Francisco house and buying 3 properties around it for multi-millions of dollars.
Buying podcasts that he
buying
likes.
$100 million podcasts for...
Yeah.
He's acting out, in my opinion. just from I'm way back here. I don't have that kind of money, and maybe it's just very small percentages to him. So maybe I'm completely off here. But
what was the old phrase? Get in where you fit in.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I like to think if I had that much money, I'd be smarter with it. Okay. Anyways, let's move on to the main topic now, which is going to be Claude Mythos. So Claude Mythos came out this week. Claude Mythos Preview actually is what it's called, in coordination with something called Project Glasswing. And what Claude Mythos is doing for us here is nothing yet. So Anthropic said this is too powerful.
So it's a myth. It's mythos. Greek. It's a story.
It is a mythical beast. So there is a theory there's a couple theories out there, and we'll get into those as to why this isn't available to the public. But the one that's front and center is that Claude Mythos is going to change a lot of things. And I think as we reach AGI, this stuff is just going to be more and more prevalent, where a lot of things are going to have to change. So here's the issue from a 10,000 foot view. Claude Mythos Preview is so powerful at detecting vulnerabilities in software, internet browsers, or hardware devices. Getting through and hacking, it's so powerful at detecting vulnerabilities that now Black Hat hacker could point it at something it wanted to hack, and it just sits there and scans and scans and scans for vulnerabilities, finding them at a really high percentage rate, therefore getting all these what they call day zero vulnerabilities, which are basically day zero means that the developers haven't had any days to fix the vulnerability. They're unaware of it. That's what a day zero vulnerability is. Anyhow, it's so good at finding these that it's going to cause a lot of problems if it gets in the wrong hands. So what...
Maybe it's good at finding them because it's coming from Claude code. The bugs.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. So it actually, let me show you a little bit of a graphic here. This is one of the tests it ran against Firefox 147, which has been around for a long time. Firefox is definitely not new. And you see what Claude Sonnet was able to do, produce as far as vulnerabilities versus Opus versus Mythos. Huge difference. So this is a really powerful tool at finding vulnerabilities. Now, What Project Glasswing is going to do is it's going to give a small group of powerful companies the ability to use it for white hat purposes. So they're going to essentially run Claude Mythos on their own software, on their own systems, find the vulnerabilities themselves, and be patching it proactively for, anything can be exploited. That's the thought anyhow. That's the reason why. Anthropic put out a big 200-page book about why this can't be released to the public. So
I think it's appropriately named.
yeah.
Right, everyone's an expert on this thing before you even know what the damn thing is. It's myth making.
That's
And
true.
actually, these labs are getting quite good at that. Let me see if I can wrap up some of the critical takes that I've seen. One technical take was they really only tested it on older code, and it hasn't been tested on the newest, the most updated code out there, applications out there. But we don't know, right? So you're always going to get critique, but that was one of them that maybe it was successful because it's looking at really old, vulnerable tech, right? That's what they were testing it on.
Yeah.
The other one is a marketing ploy. And this is one that seems typical in the AI labs, which is, what is the best way to market something, Jason? Is it something positive or something negative? What do you think?
Negative.
Negative. And why is that? That's always something that's interesting. If you appeal to fear, there's a strategic benefit I'm going to come to in a second. We have this tool that's going to destroy your software enterprise. It's going to find holes in it.
Yeah.
You better work with us now together.
Yeah.
And we can sign a few contracts if you like, so that when this thing is launched, you're already ahead of the game. That's a nice sales pitch, right? It's kind of like the mafia comes to you, like, we have an offer that's too good to refuse. Don't refuse it or else, right? We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen when we release it into the public,
Yeah.
right?
That's true.
So you better get on board. So that's smart, actually, right? To say it's not like other companies don't go out there and sell to the downside, right? To sell to the risks.
Yeah.
That's why you have auditors. That's why you have McKinsey, Bain, BCG. That's a typical sales pitch. Oh, and then the other thing they've been doing a lot of on the negative side is going to take everyone's jobs, right? They keep saying this over and over and over. Could there be another strategic reason to create more barriers to entry that you might be focusing on the negative? And I'll do a really cynical take. I don't know if it's true, but it's something that you should always be suspicious of. Are they trying to get regulated
Maybe.
actively?
Now,
why would you do that?
It's going
What's
to
your
punish
thought?
your competitors too. I mean,
It's
they're
going to
ready
punish.
for it.
Exactly. We have both of us, OpenAI, Anthropic, and the rest, we have hundreds of billions in a war chest, or
Yeah.
maybe Anthropic has less, but they have a big war chest. We have already barriers to entry, technical barriers to entry. They've been talking about stories of the Chinese stealing their stuff. Please regulate that. That's already been out there. It's going to take jobs. We should have a conversation. Sam Altman his company produced a moving beyond the capitalist economy and an AI universal basic income. And now you have this, which is saying we're going to have cybersecurity problems. Hint, hint, geopolitical, national security risks. Is it a subtle, not so subtle hint to government? Please regulate us in
Right.
cybersecurity, in labor law, in privacy, data, etc., and even some protectionism thrown in. Why do you do that? Because then the cost of competing goes really high for those who aren't already in the game. And if you're being threatened by open source models, will they even be able to participate? Will they have the lawyers, the lobbying capacity to play the game? That's the most cynical possible take you can have, but it's not like in every industry that's out there, you don't have lobbyists doing this.
You're painting Anthropic with the whitest of white hats then, which I don't know. That might be correct. They did stand tall on the Department of War contract that we've talked about.
But that's different, though. That's selling to government. This is saying regulate us to increase the cost of competition.
I
Right?
see what you're saying.
Right? So if you put new regulations in that we help you write, we're here. We're here to help you, right? New cybersecurity laws, labor laws, whatever, protect workers. We're here to write those with you. We're going to write them in our favor, and you're going to need a legal team to comply. That means your costs very early are high. maybe it's well intentioned even, but it's also a strategic benefit if it's written in your favor. And this exists the world over of people doing this.
It brings up to the forefront of conversation a lot of vulnerabilities and exposure that AI is going to bring to us, whereas the other companies are being greedy little munchkins and not mentioning any of this type of stuff, right? So that was kind of my point with them being white hat is
Yeah.
they're the ones, calling, throwing up the flag and saying, you got to pay attention to this because this is going to get out in front of us real quick, which I think we're already past that point.
And that's fair. That's fair. So that would be the counter argument is if they take it too far, they'll attract the wrong sort of regulation.
Yeah.
That's more punishing. A data center pause, for example.
Yeah, we have one of those here.
Heavy, heavy privacy restrictions. I mean, the Europeans are much farther along on that to the point where it's difficult to even have an AI business, right? So,
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. So the way that they have it structured right now is the companies who are involved in Project Glasswing, they didn't give them just a, hey, go use it and do what you need to do. No, instead they said you have got $100 million worth of credits and tokens, and you get to use it for however much, I guess, time that takes to use up those credits. That's how they positioned it, which was kind of strange to me on the onset. But here's kind of the companies that have access to this. So there's 40 companies that we don't know who it is, but they have critical software and infrastructure. So I would assume like telecom ISPs, probably healthcare ISPs, Intel. Yeah, Intel's not one of the named ones. The ones that are named are AWS, Anthropic, Apple, Broadcom, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JPMorgan Chase, the Linux Foundation, which if you don't know, pretty much all the internet is Linux, Microsoft, Nvidia, Palo Alto Networks. So interesting choice, and especially to call out like Palo Alto is not a monopoly in security. They have a lot of competitors, Palo Alto does, so they are one of the biggest players. But I guess Cisco's there too. So there are a number of large players in that industry listed here. So I don't know. I think it's a nice thing that they're trying to do. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and just say they're trying to do.
No, I'm not saying it's not nice. I'm just saying it's also strategically probably intelligent.
Yeah, no, you made a good point with that. When I hear that as a company that's not included in this list, and I have a working relationship with Anthropic, I am calling up my rep that day and saying, "What the hell? We need this. Like, how do we get this?" You're absolutely 100% right. I think that's huge,
Yeah.
big brain sales.
But with all of this, though, AGI has been coming forever. Is this another one of those? The next big thing that is not really a big bang when it comes out?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see.
Jensen said AGI is here the other day and very quickly walked back from it. I don't think he said, "Oh, we got AGI."
If the standard is it lies, right? It's sycophantic, then it's basically already human. I mean, you got a lot of that already in corporate employees.
Yeah, you brought something up. I didn't read their entire white paper, but I had Claude give me a summary of it. And basically what was happening with Mythos in the beginning is Mythos was doing things it shouldn't be doing and lying about it. It was covering its tracks. It was going into GitHub and editing GitHub so it could hide what it's been editing in its own code. And it was explicitly told not to do some things, and it did it anyway.
Have you used Claude Code yourself?
No, I haven't.
It already does it.
It does?
All the time. I was coding a language app. I was creating this old Roman dice game that nobody will probably ever play, but I found it interesting. But you would tell it, hey, this screen is not producing the right code, and go fix it. Like, I fixed it. Check the screen. It's not fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try again. I fixed it. I know what the problem is now.
Yeah.
Go back. It's not fixed. And then it'll go pretend it's debugging, and it's not. And people are now becoming more and more aware of this. I just saw a senior engineer. They were saying actually the latest Claude Code version is degrading for some reason, and that you cannot trust it for very sophisticated engineering tasks. And I wonder if that's true. And does it have to do with the fact that it's hiding stuff? It's covering up stuff. It's not, you can't say the machine's lying, but that's the best word we have for it in English.
Right.
That it's confabulating is the big word, but it's telling you it's doing things that it's not. And so imagine, well, you might need Mythos to come in and then clean up the bugs, right? And the security vulnerabilities because Claude Code is producing them.
Well, so here's my hot take on that. Anthropic has been adjusting their like 5-hour window. So they view usage in a 5-hour window, and they've been moving that window as to what qualifies as usage. And the theory behind that is that they've run out of compute. They don't have enough compute to handle this spike that they've had in revenue users.
Right.
So it could be that somewhere on the back end, they're maybe starting to limit token usage, something like that, that could cause these anomalies.
That's an interesting point because I think I saw a take, either it was Andreessen or one of the others. He said that maybe this pause on Mythos is about compute and not actually about security.
Could be.
That they just don't have enough compute right now to unleash Mythos in addition to what they already have. Which maybe, I don't know. It's an interesting perspective because
it definitely does create a supply demand issue or a high demand issue, I guess is what you would say.
Yeah.
It could be. I don't know that we'll ever know, but it's fun to guess. My guess is it really is super dangerous, and if I wanted to go hack the DoD, I could, or DOW, I could probably do it if I had Mythos. And I don't know. I'm just going to choose to believe that.
Well, why not the DMV?
The DMV? I don't know. When I was 16, I would have hacked the DMV, but I don't know about now. Anyways, it's an interesting topic. Very fascinating what these things can do. There's some good content out there with security professionals actually diving deep into this and what it means. So I would suggest you go find that. They can talk about way better than I can. But super interesting, the implications that could have for us. Let's kind of move on now to data centers and what I'm going to call energy reform as well. So there has been a lot of public movement around data centers lately. It takes a lot of effort and drive to get people to go vote for a president every 4 years, let alone these local issues. So when people come out in droves like this, something has got the attention of the public. And the public,
are they organized? That's what I never know with these. I'm always suspicious. They all have the same signs.
Yeah,
are there economic interests? I don't know. I'm just wondering.
Maybe. I mean, could be. I can't rule that out. I don't know. That's not something.
There's a lot of NIMBYism around here, around this.
I have some friends here in my town who have gone to the protests to have the data centers are now paused here because we have a lot going up here from, I think.
So what's motivating those friends? Just maybe we should get into that. I think that's interesting for people to think about.
I think number one is energy cost. So number one is these are going to drive up energy usage, and therefore my energy is going to cost more. I think that's number one. I saw an article the other day. I didn't click on it. Just read the headline. I am guilty of doing that. I'm sure everyone is these days. But the headline was that utility rates are about to rival mortgages as far as your monthly bill stack goes. Getting up there with now competing with mortgages in price. That may be overstated, I would think. Again, I didn't.
So what's interesting to me about that is if it's energy that you're worried about, are you anti-AI as well? Or is it only energy and you're not really anti-AI? You're just saying, I don't want my energy bill to go up because of these data centers. Yeah. Then maybe the protest is in the wrong direction. I think this is what a lot of people are saying. Maybe it should be aimed at restrictions that make it almost impossible to build new power generation.
Well,
what do you think?
I don't think that's how big groups of people think, unfortunately. I don't think you're wrong. I just don't think we're going to have a movement yet that's well thought out.
I'm just trying to get to the bottom. Is it only energy or is it actually driven by anti-AI sentiment?
No. I don't think it's anti-AI sentiment. I mean, maybe some of it is, but I think it is energy consumption. I think it is noise pollution. I think it is using up good farmland. I think it is NIMBYism. It's a lot of issues that are all converging to make this a volatile situation where people don't want them because it's gotten a lot of bad press as to these are the things it's going to do, and now those are being amplified. I've worked around data centers a lot in my life. I know what they do and what they can be. I also do know and believe that they produce loud noises, loud brown hum noises that are audible for miles around in some cases. Not the ones here. I've been around the ones here. They don't make any noise outside their own property. They can be loud. They do have a lot of power consumption, gray water consumption. I don't think it's fresh water. I think it's gray water that they use for all their cooling. But, the energy consumption issue is there. If you look at like the area around Reston, Virginia, that is Data Center Alley. and about 40% of energy consumption there is data centers already. Yeah. That's today, not even with the AI stuff. That is just because Reston, Virginia is a big data center alley. Anyways, so it is valid, like the energy concerns, and I do think that we're rushing very quickly without probably thinking about it enough. When you look at energy forecast usages, for the past decade, we've been pretty flat, okay? And we are projecting to go up. This is what we've been going up, and then we're projecting to go up even more, about 2% a year annually for the next decade, something like that. So there is going to be a spike in energy demand. Now, here's where we stand today. We have about 27%, I think it is, energy abundance. So the national grid, we have about 27% above like the maximum. We just hit a new high last year in July. We'll probably hit a new high this year in July, but we're about 27% above that in maximum capacity. So we've got overhead. The minimum suggested overhead that we have is 16%. So we're there, but over the next decade, we'll get there. Now, if you combine
but that's in the aggregate. It doesn't mean like a region won't suffer.
Correct. Yeah. So the power grid is divided up into like 10 regions. I'm in the southwest power pool, I think is what mine is. So, and we actually have something interesting going on here, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, but when you combine this with the increased storms, so if in 2024, we had the most power outages ever, and Texas was actually about like 4 minutes from going completely black, which means they have to start doing something called a black start. And if you actually go completely out of power, not just sections of the grid going down, but the entire grid goes out, you have to do something called the black start, and that can take days or weeks to turn the power completely back on. Because if you imagine you flip the switch everywhere all at once, everyone's air conditioners spin up at the same time and it immediately shorts out again. So it's not feasible. Yeah. So they have to do it section by section by section by Makes section. Sense. Very controlled, takes a long time. So it's a very scary thing when you think about having power for multiple weeks out because of something like a shortage that just happens like that. So that's kind of scary. I get that sentiment. We do have some overhead, but when you combine it with outages from, a power plant being down and weather outages, that kind of thing, I'd like to have a little bit more headroom myself, but what do I know? Here's what's happening in my area. Well, let me just talk about this real quick. So what this is on the screen, so these are the power grid. So this is the Southwest Power Pool, and this over here is the average queue in months to get an interconnect agreement. So what that means is that if you have a new power plant or you have a facility that's going to put any type of power back into the grid, like a solar farm or a wind farm, those things have to have interconnect agreements, and those things take multiple years, up to 4 years in some cases, to get approved because of all the studies.
CAISO, is that California?
Yeah, it's California. Yeah, this is California.
The 43 months gave it away.
Yeah. So that top one is California. Second one is ERCOT, which is Texas. ISO is New England. MISO.
That's pretty fast, actually. I would have expected New England to be also highly bureaucratic.
Well, I mean, over 2 years to do basically 3 studies on what the power is going to do. So what they've done here in my power pool region is they've done something called a 90-day agreement. So these large consumption entities that are going to be putting power back into the grid have their own power generation capabilities. They're getting fast track on a 90-day fast track in order to get that power up on the grid quicker. However, it doesn't have to be in existence yet. That power generation can be planned, and they're still going to put it on the 90-day approval. So I don't know. I think in a lot of ways that we have probably acted too quickly. At least in my hometown here, we've got 6 or 7 very large projects going on at the same time, and it could cause issues. I don't know. I don't have a problem with pausing and thinking about it, making sure it's the right thing, but it brings up a lot of interesting questions as far as, why are we doing this? How could we be doing this better? What's going to happen with China? China has super cheap power. Are we going to have to move all our data centers over there? Is that even going to be feasible?
Well, we should, to say why people are pushing for more energy, and we'll come to China after that. I think we need to say, what is it about AI that people think is worth it to actually expand the energy production so fast?
Yeah.
And why we need to do it fast. So that's before you even get to China. So the first would be, what do you lose if you block all this? Right? It's hard to see the things that aren't there yet. But let's roll it back to what Meta said, is that they're going to be developing AI for health. If the cost of slow development is you could have saved many more people's lives, is that worth it? Because it's always a trade-off, right? You could say maybe it's worth it because that's speculative, right? But what's not speculative is I know what's going on my bill. But let's say the AI learns to map the entire genome and can expand or extend your life by
Mm-hmm.
40, 50 years by giving you medical care that's perfectly adapted to your genes. And you don't have the energy to now move that direction because you've capped the energy production
Yeah.
with either bureaucracy or these protests or whatever is coming, right? It's turning into like a cultural war too. But I don't think people are doing a good job, and the AI labs themselves are not doing a good job of saying what those positive benefits would be that we may miss out on if we do this too slowly, right? Could we get new drugs based on that? That's just the medical example. I think the medical example is easier for people to see and see the benefit immediately. You maybe want to live a little bit longer. Maybe we could find a way to get rid of diabetes. You know, there are many different things you could think about that could be resolved. Maybe we could speed up the government, that it's not 24 months. AI could actually speed that up by making those studies go quicker. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I think nobody's making a good case for why AI might be worth it to for you to not protest, actually, to
Mm-hmm.
protest the other direction where you want more energy. I'm not saying that's the actual case. I'm just saying there are trade-offs here. And what it bothers me on social media is you either get completely anti-AI, there's no good use case for it at all, which is insane because there already are, or you get pure AI psychosis, which are the only good use cases, which is also not true. There are valid concerns, the energy being one, the environmental impact being another, privacy being another, right? Cybersecurity is the next one on the list now that we have Mythos. So I think we haven't even had that discussion, if you ask me. We haven't had a discussion about what the trade-offs are.
Yeah.
That's before you even get to, and this is where China comes in. People are afraid that China will get there first and they're going to dominate the world economy because they will unlock those innovations before America, whereas America has been dominating innovation for forever.
Yeah.
That's where the fear is coming from, if you ask me. That fear that they'll get there first. And then our companies will be at a huge disadvantage.
You know what this issue actually reminds me of, and I'll probably get some flack for this, but this actually reminds me of the vaccine issue, the COVID-19 vaccine. Just the type of argument that we're having reminds me around that subject.
I think here we're talking about both science and economics,
Yeah.
economic impact and business. COVID, for some reason, split into cultural factions.
Yeah.
And maybe only because an election was coming. I don't know. I don't know why that happened. That's why I think people were so frustrated. Like, what is the science? Why didn't it stay in the scientific domain? I'm okay with having that discussion because I think looking backwards, the mistake we all made was making it political when it should maybe have never been. And I think we don't want to have that same mistake with AI, that we split into cultural factions because there's a midterm coming up and we think that this election is the most important ever. And you get one side aligning against AI, saying it does nothing good. It just steals jobs, destroys our energy infrastructure. It takes away our capability to address climate change. That's one side. And the other side's like, oh, it's a free for all,
Right.
right?
Right.
We don't really understand it. We're all boomers up here in the on the hill, but we know that you're against it and we're against you. You know that's not helpful in this debate. And so I wonder how we can get to a place, and that's what you're hinting at,
Well,
where we have an actual discussion about trade-offs and not a religious discussion.
yeah, basically. Um,
That's a fair point.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, we can always, if there's an issue, we can always just turn them off. I mean, that's probably easier said than done, but I mean, you can always just turn them off or tell them you can't run at full power. It's not something that's just completely broken the second that these things are built. It's something that you can pull back if you needed to a little bit until we get the infrastructure to support it correctly, which there isn't happening. I know in your neck of the woods, Mike, there's some new natural gas power plants that are coming online just for this purpose, to power these new data centers. I mean, there is infrastructure being built and
Yeah,
added.
there's subsidies everywhere to attract employment to all the states.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to see, if there is some kind of energy crisis, I do think it will help spur forward a lot of what I would categorize as industrial NIMBYism, where these companies who have had all the power for so long and all the money, literal power, and all the money for so long, have put off these, there's actually committees. Let's see, there's Edison Electric Institute, the Consumer Energy Alliance, American Legislative Exchange Council, Koch-founded campaign organizations, Americans for Prosperity, that all lobby against solar and wind. Just because they want fuel to be the way that we go with our country and our energy, because they're heavily leveraged.
Hey, man, we're from Oklahoma.
Yep.
How many of those wind turbines have we seen?
Not many.
Because we had a
Western.
Well, where I lived in the middle, where there's nothing but cows and maybe meth labs.
Yeah.
And you had some oil derricks from the past there. You had a particularly effective Oklahoma State alum, right, who lobbied to get a bunch of wind turbines there.
He's got his name on the stadium in Stillwater somewhere.
He does somewhere, right? But hey, I'm all for experimenting. I'm all for experiment. You want to try wind? Try it. You want to try solar? Try it. You want to try nuclear? Try it. Don't do fail fast with nuclear, though. Make sure it works from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
By experiment, I didn't mean just, go out and try things out, whatever, and see what happens, like people are doing with vibe coding. I meant don't experiment with nuclear, with the types that we're using.
Yeah, I think we do need to get heavily into nuclear again, and it's just got a bad rap because when something happens, it is catastrophic and it's all over the news, but it still doesn't claim a lot of lives necessarily. Anyways, we can get into that topic a little bit more later, but I think we kind of went into that quite a bit in a different way than I actually thought we were going to talk about it, which is really cool, interesting to me. Now I kind of want to go back to AI on the software level and talk about vertical AI. And I'm gonna let you dig into this one probably more than me, but let me just give a quick intro. So the thought behind this is that a lot of AI companies a couple of years ago started coming out, and they were going straight for a vertical. So a healthcare vertical, a legal vertical, that kind of thing. So let's just talk about healthcare specifically. There would be a company that's very specialized in the needs for HIPAA and the requirements around that, and they have an AI product that works with it and has been learning how to do it better and better ever since it was first conceived of. Now with these LLMs and these foundational models like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude, with them getting so good and so powerful, the fear is that these companies are just going to be able to leverage the foundation models to take the place of these vertical AI companies that have already found their niche and that are already working in these industries. You have a different opinion, however, I think.
There's a debate that one group thinks that these foundation models will get so good that all of these vertical applications will get eaten up. So take Harvey AI, which operates in the legal vertical. So what we mean by vertical is that your AI consumes the tokens or the platform of Anthropic or ChatGPT, OpenAI, or Gemini, and then you go vertical into a workflow. So let me give you an example of a workflow. Let's say I used to be in mergers and acquisitions. You have to, on the one hand, formulate the strategy of the company. Next step is find where you have gaps that your organic business can't fill. And then there are only a few ways to fill the gaps, either through R&D, innovation, but one of those is acquisitions. It's one of the most common ways. So one is to figure out what kind of gap it is, create a thesis about what kind of companies could fill the gap. Then you got to go out and search for those companies. Once you search for the companies, then you have to do due diligence on those companies. Then you have to rip them apart, do legal due diligence, etc. And then you do a financial model of it, and then you're going on to buy it, and then you have to govern it and integrate it afterwards. So that's like a whole workflow. And the question is, can Claude, the base model, do that? And a lot of VCs are saying that if you're doing vertical AI or SaaS is where they first said it, SaaS is dead. The reason they were saying that is because they believed that these foundation models will penetrate those verticals and consume vertical AI and SaaS. You'll be out of a business. Now, the one that I'm working on is strategy. And strategy goes into several different verticals. It can go into investment, it can go into competitive intelligence, marketing, procurement, etc. And the question is, would these foundation models do that? Maybe they could, but some recent research I saw in my vertical was that as the foundation models have gotten better, they're actually gotten worse at strategy. Now that's interesting. Why would that happen? Well, remember a few episodes back, we talked about reinforcement learning through human feedback, and it turns out that humans are also bad at strategy. And the reason is we're short-sighted, supremely interested in the short term, getting short-term results. So Claude and the others, they can do short-term stuff really well, like operations, financial models, tasks that you got to do like this week. But if they got to speculate out into the future or cover an entire workflow, they may struggle because then you start getting into the uncertainty of procurement. Procurement sounds very deterministic, like just do these tasks. But procurement, as one example, is surrounded by geopolitical events, market movements, regulations, competitive threats, and so on, commodity prices, and so on, so on, and so on. Can Claude handle that? That's one side where we say some of the research is suggesting maybe it's not going to be good at that because those are long-term ramifications that it may be not good at, right? The other thing to consider there is, and I think this is where you get into where are these foundation models going, is what is their current business model? The current business model, it's a horizontal platform model that sells to vertical companies. So they sell tokens to them. And if they were to go into, for example, strategic reasoning, that would mean they would be competing against their own customer base. For example, if McKinsey were to use the tokens of Anthropic or whoever their favorite shop is, and they start going after McKinsey's business, how long would McKinsey still keep using the tokens? So they would lose cash to gain cash, and there's a mismatch because McKinsey and those vertical companies already own the distribution. They already own the customers. So if you start doing that, it's going to take you longer to get those service level agreements to penetrate. Could be 2 to 3 year lead times while you're losing the cash. And in fact, in that case, they've partnered with these consulting companies. Why would they do that if they're going to go vertical? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Is it technically possible that they could go vertical and do SaaS type businesses where workflows are more deterministic, but the base models are stochastic, meaning probabilistic? Maybe it's possible to gain control over them, make them more deterministic, fit into operating environments. I know Palantir's gone in that direction. I think it's an open debate. I just think people are thinking only technically, and they're really risk averse about AI because nobody knows where it's going. And although VCs are supposed to be risk tolerant, they're being very conservative about where the horizontal foundation models are going and not investing or trying not to invest too much in vertical AI just because of that. Now, other VCs are going full on board in vertical AI. I just found this particular question interesting because it's a strategic and business model question.
Yeah.
In the end, it's partially technical, but it's also what really will Gemini, Google, Meta, Anthropic, OpenAI, and the rest do. I don't think we know, but there are tensions in those business models.
It doesn't make sense in my mind for OpenAI to go and become an expert in HIPAA and try to do healthcare or to try to be a reinsurance vertical like that. It doesn't make sense for them to get that specialized. In my opinion, if they were to be that specialized, then now we're talking the scenario where the only companies in existence are these big AI companies. And now, if you read OpenAI's new manifesto on what the world should look like and that everyone should have, instead of universal income, Sam Altman was proposing that everyone have investment in the AI companies, in the tech stack, essentially. And that be
his, of course.
Yeah, his, of course. Which to me is insane for some other different reasons. But it would follow that stack where these companies are now the only companies and they do literally everything. I just don't see that scenario happening. And to me, it would kind of be like Spotify going to Justin Timberlake and Taylor Swift and saying, you know what, we don't need you. We're going to make our own music now.
Yeah, I think it's even worse because it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the skills and capabilities that you need to be a platform
Yeah.
They are not the same skills that you need to go vertical.
Yeah.
They're just not. So Salesforce to go vertical has to understand a sales funnel from beginning to end. Do the LLM researchers understand that? Does Dario understand that? Does Altman understand that? They could maybe hire these domain experts to do it,
Yeah.
but then it's a fundamentally different business model with different customer cost acquisitions, different channels than they currently have.
I don't think that they are going to. I just don't think the foundation models are going to take over those niches. I just don't see it happening. Yeah.
We could be wrong, but they would be heavily competing against each other then.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we would be in a very dystopian world if that happens.
Hey, in any case, these people in X pushing you to go into service businesses, own your own business, go buy a small business,
Yeah.
own a car wash.
Yeah.
We can all become gardeners. They're going to be banking in the future.
I mean, I'm going to go be a homesteader. I'm going to take my universal income and
Yeah.
I'm going to go.
Exactly. While I'm on my UBI, I think that's what they call it, the gardener is going to be banking.
Take my family off grid.
Yes.
Just be happy with the rest of my life and not depleted of all of my dopamine. Anyways, okay. You got anything else? I think I'm done for the evening.
I'm AI'd out, right? So
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Pretty much. Okay. All right. Well, hey, appreciate you joining us for this evening's discussion. We will be back next week. Make sure you check on us. We have a new clips channel. You can find that somewhere. I'll link to it in the description. Tell a friend about us. Make a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear suggestions on what you want us to talk about. Subscribe. It really helps us, and it's at no cost to you. So that would be my suggestion. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.